I woke up the next morning, not only had the rain lashed down, but a real pea soup of fog had enclosed the hill. Would Red Marley have to be abandoned? The clerk of the course held a meeting for all of us riders. That's if I could find him.
Right, lads, I'm sorry for the delay. As you know, we've had little problems with the mist. It's not so much for your safety, it's marshals. We can't see marshals, but we've sorted that problem out now. If you haven't got one of these tags on, there'll be no practice, boys. And also, if you haven't got an Alec Dorrell sticker on your throttle cable, there again, your bike hasn't been scrutineered.
While everyone prayed that the mist would lift, I went in search of the bike I'd been promised to ride in the hill climb. Right, so this is my bike.
It's the bike you're going to borrow, yeah.
A fine old BSA.
Yeah.
Now, obviously everybody that's here has to have the bike scrutineered.
That's right, yep.
There's so many different kinds of machines, trials, grass trackers, scrambling bikes. What are you really looking for when you're scrutineering them?
One of the most important things we have to look for is making sure that the throttle returns nice and quick like that. The second thing, you have to make sure that the brakes are good and the levers are tight on the bars, they don't drop around. You have to check the wheel bearings, the spokes, make sure that all the nuts and bolts are tight.
Well, I'm still here with scrutineering and I've noticed a bike that I remember from the Millennium Red Marley, and it's Vincent Priestley with his amazing BSA. It's possibly the oldest bike in the event, isn't it, Vincent?
I think it may be one of the oldest. It's but a 1936 frame. It's what's the characteristics of it are the girder forks,
yeah,
and the dead back end, or hardtail as my son would say.
Yeah, that's what the bikers say, isn't it? Hardtail, rigid rear end, girder forks. It looks absolutely ancient. It's a bit of a bitzer, isn't it? Because I'm sure these handlebars aren't standard.
It's all BSA. You know, it's the wheels are BSA, the back wheels BSA, the engine's BSA, the gearbox is BSA.
It's not. You don't ride it on the road, do you?
Oh no.
It's purely a competition machine.
I built it up as a competition machine, primarily for a vintage grass track.
These are the grids that tell you who you're riding against in the first knockout. Me, I was up against a chap who was riding this bike. Right, it's not against the clock, this event. You actually go up 2 at a time. So I find out who my opponent is going to be. He's called Wayne, and here he is. How are you, sir?
All right, mate. Talk.
A bit of friendly rivalry never did anybody any harm, did it? But I believe you've done this before.
Last year,
And this is your machine, a Triumph Matisse. Did you do the event on this one last year?
No.
You didn't?
No, on a 500.
On a 500. So what sort of motor's this one? Is it a 250 or
650.
650? Bloody hell. That's not fair. It's a beautiful place, Red Marley. You'll find it approximately halfway between Worcester and Kidderminster. Here, the bikes were all born before 1970. There's plenty of noise, there's plenty of action, and most of the bikes are British. Everyone's on their practice runs at the moment and getting the feel of the hill and their bikes, some of which haven't been out since the last Red Marley. Getting over the pimple is the key challenge. Get the speed or angle wrong and you end up like these guys. Don't laugh, that'll be me in a few minutes. The start is okay, it's once you get to the 1 in 1.5 section, lose your bottle here and there's no way you can get going again with all your momentum lost. Look at this guy going so slow. It looks a stable way to attempt the hill, but he loses it anyway. Sometimes you think you've made it, but right at the last, you haven't. And what if you fall off and the following bike not only beats you, but splatters your face with mud? Then you have the shame of the stewards having to help you off the hill. This geezer, with a ZZ top beard and the old wartime dispatcher's coat, makes easy work of Red Marley with a determined look on his face. So, when I have a go on Alec's BSA, my practice run has to be a doddle. When I get to the pimple, things become a little bit more painful. And I have the shame of not just one, but 2 stewards having to help me off the hill. Oh, I'm a bit unbothered. I made a bit of an arse of the practice run and lobbed it right near the top. Just crested the pimple, got a bit there, like you do, but my landing wasn't too clever and the back wheel went out from underneath me. Unfortunately, I'm alright, obviously, because I landed on my head, but I've managed to break my clutch lever in a fairly important place just here, where it mounts on there. We haven't got a spare, Alec, who kindly lent me this bike, has had to go off and do his first practice run. So many people have been lobbing it that Alec is only just now having his first practice run right at the end of the session because everybody's been bringing their bikes for running repairs, including me. What we can do though is during the lunch break, there's an auto jump up there, so we're going to go up there and we're going to have a rummage around, and I am convinced that I will be back in the competition itself. Having a nearby bike jumble is useful, but how am I going to find a suitable clutch lever in time for racing? Well, I need not have worried. After I've been looking for a lever, I get back to the bike, and Alec has already fixed it, just in the nick of time. I don't think this is original BSA, is it?
Oh no, that's about year 2000, I think.
Right, well, you're a star,
Made
thank
in
you.
Taiwan.
We better go racing, haven't we?
Yep, yep.
Let's get it on. Well, the racing proper had begun, and the new pen system seemed to be working for keeping riders paired up fairly. So there was no chance of some bikers actually picking and choosing their opponents. You know the old, "Oh, I've developed a mechanical problem," which strangely seemed to pop up when you don't like the look of the bloke you're racing against.
They can't fiddle the system because they're in the pens, then they're drawn down into lines, and once they're in that line, they're ready to be pulled onto the start, so they can't fiddle anything.
I must say that Terry Challinor, resplendent in his traditional bright yellow, was doing some excellent times up the hill, and certainly equaling his achievements from last year at Red Marley.
It was quite a good run, that one. I had a good run that time, just flat out and hung on.
Does it get harder from here on in?
Yeah, the opposition gets harder. Got to make the start out of the trap, and really that's vital to make that.
Now, everyone else is taking more or less the same line, but your missus tells me on the quiet that you have a strategy.
Yes, I have. If somebody's in front of me, I've got an alternative line that I can take.
Presumably, it gets risky in terms of sort of bashing handlebars or colliding. If you're with somebody who's very similar in terms of the machine and their ability and their experience, you're fighting hard for the same line.
Yes, that's why I have an alternative line in case somebody's got the best line.
So then, it was my turn. You'd think that after a fall in practice, I'd have learnt the characteristics of both the bike and the hill, and I'd make it quickly over the brow, having soundly beaten my opponent, a Mr. Wayne Hyde. Once again, I binned it in exactly the same place. I had to abandon the climb and go down the lane of shame back to the bottom. Well, that was it. I was out of the competition. Wayne had beaten me fair and square. One of the things that's been bothering me all day was this business of which gear you should use on the start grid. Now, normally there might be a little bit of conjecture about this sort of thing, but usually it's one of two gears that people argue over. Do you start in first or do you start in second? I had people today telling me to start in third, that it will pull third off the start line. But Alec, who's biking, has insisted that I used first, try and hook third by the time I reach the track. So I get first, big handful off the line, great big wheelie. Other guy disappears into the distance, I chase after him and trying to catch him, make an arse of it right at the top in exactly the same place that I fell off on the practice run. So, let's take a look at some of the highlights of this great bike show at Red Marley. Terry Challinor ended up with the best time of the day and created a new hill record, an astonishing 21.6 seconds. However, unfortunately for him, he was beaten in a subsequent race-off with Tim Manton on the 500cc Cheney Jawa. So the Class 3 results look like this. Tim first, Terry second, and third place going equally to Glenn Mottershead and Arthur Browning on 1965 machines. Class 2, which featured smaller pre-70 bikes, the honours went to Mickey Beach on a BSA B40 with an excellent time of 26.2 seconds. Paul Bennett, Dave Faulkner and Matty Taylor all came in after him. And in the pre-50 honours, the Priestley brothers clean up. Vince, on his 1938 Empire Star, made it to the top in 29.7 seconds. Very respectable for such an old, rigid-frame machinery. But it's our hats off to Paul Bennett on a BSA B40 Matisse, who just foots out a few feet from that finish line. At least he's over the main hump, so a few drags of his machine get him a finish. Well done, old bean. Well, that's it from Red Marley. I didn't win. In fact, I didn't even progress beyond the first round, but Steve Berry will be back. And next time, I think I'm going to have a bit more practice instead of just turning up on the day and having a go. Still, it was great fun, and I will be back with another Bike Show UK very soon.